The movie opens with a girl clutching something close to her chest as she walks down a rain-soaked street. A church is signified by a red cross. She nervously leaves what seems to be a baby at the church's entrance, checking to ensure no one sees her. Then it turns out that two women in a car have been observing the events unfold. Their conversation reveals they're investigating the church. Despite the heavy rain, one of them, referred to as Detective 1, rushes to place the baby inside a box at the church. The ringing of a bell signals the baby's presence inside the church. Two men, Dong and Sung, take the baby indoors. Dong quickly checks outside to ensure they're alone. Sung finds a letter in the baby's basket from the young mother, promising to return for her child. However, no additional information or contact details are provided. Sung instructs Doug to erase the CCTV footage of the baby being left by So Young. It turns out that Sung and Dong plan to sell the baby on the black market, with Sung leading the operation. They drive to Sung's home on the city outskirts, unaware they're being followed by detectives. Sung runs his illicit business under the guise of a laundry store in the city. He receives a call from Dong informing him that So Young is searching for her baby. So Young admits she left her baby outside the baby box, leading Sung and Dong to suspect another party's involvement. Meanwhile, So Young is at the church, searching for her baby. There are no administrative records of the baby. Dong falsely claims that he didn't see So Young's baby at the previous night, and shows her around the church to convince her the baby isn't there. Fearing she might alert the police, Dong secretly arranges for So Young to meet her baby at Song's store. They guilt her for leaving her baby outside the box. So Young's note stating she would return for her baby later prevents the baby from being adopted and limits his future prospects. Sung tries to convince So Young that they're only seeking loving and suitable parents for her baby. Despite their assurance, So Young remains skeptical and contemplates reporting them to the authorities. To dissuade her, Sung discloses that the going rate for a baby boy in the black market is approximately 10 million won, which will be split among the three of them. Eventually, So Young consents to the plan and agrees to accompany to meet the prospective buyer the following morning. As Sung prepares for their journey, they're confronted by some hooligans, demanding repayment of Sung's gambling debts. Sung assures them he'll settle his debts by the following week. With this matter temporarily resolved, the trio embarks on their quest to find new parents for So Young's baby boy. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, the two detectives continue their pursuit, hoping to gather evidence of their involvement in human trafficking. Following a lengthy journey and casual conversation to alleviate the tension, the trio finally reaches their destination. They meet with the prospective parents who express dissatisfaction with the baby's facial features, claiming they differ from the photo provided. They attempt to negotiate the price, proposing a 60% reduction, and inquiring about the possibility of paying in 12 monthly installments. Unable to tolerate their behavior, So Young defends her baby. She drives the potential buyers away with veiled accusations and departs in anger. Back at the car, Dong and Sung are unsure how to handle So Young's outburst. They resolve to explore other potential buyers later. Simultaneously, a murder has occurred at a hotel, drawing the attention of the police. The victim, a man, suffered a broken neck due to an assault by an unidentified attacker. However, the police suspect a woman is responsible for the crime. The trio continues their journey, unknowingly being followed by a detective. They visit an orphanage where Dong grew up and is adored by all the children. After interacting with the kids, Dong spends time reminiscing about the matron who raised him. Meanwhile, Sung and So Young are seeking adoptive parents for the baby. A boy from the orphanage asks Sung to adopt him, but Sung, unable to support himself, declines. During dinner, the matron shares a story of an adopted child who was mistreated by his parents after they had their own children, which worries So Young. She comforts her crying baby with a lullaby in the car, while the detectives plant a GPS tracker. Hearing the lullaby, they realize So Young still cares for her baby. In the evening, Sung bathes the baby while Dong and So Young argue about her decision to abandon her child. Dong despises such actions, noting that only a fraction of parents ever return. So Young retorts, criticizing Dong's life despite his upbringing in an orphanage. After Dong leaves, Sung discloses that Dong's parents never returned for him, which deeply affects Dong. Outside, Dong's junior expresses that all the kids admire him and expect him to succeed, adding to Dong's self-disappointment. In the morning, So Young apologizes to Dong for her harsh words, and he forgives her. The police discover that So Young, who was working for a prostitute, is the murderer, and her baby is the victim's son. When questioned, her pimp reveals that she fled after deciding against aborting the baby. This complicates the investigation, prompting the detectives to expedite their plan to apprehend Sung and Dong by setting up a sting operation with a fake buyer. As the trio heads to meet a buyer, another buyer offers double the market price, a trap set by the detectives. En route, Sung discovers the orphanage boy in their car, who insists on joining them, leading to his reluctant inclusion in their journey. During their journey, the boy's talkative and innocent nature lightens the mood, bringing the trio closer. Upon meeting the potential buyers, So-young questions their commitment to her baby if they have their own children later. The buyer's hesitation reveals they are plants by the detectives. Dong, suspecting this, tests them with questions about infertility treatments. Once their deception is confirmed, the transaction is called off. So-young admires Dong's astuteness. The boy's antics, like opening the window in a car wash, bring laughter and unity to the group despite the unusual circumstances. The group begins to share their pasts, with So-young even revealing her real name. After a failed attempt, the detectives plan to use the murder victim's wife to intimidate So-young. They disclose that So-young is the murderer, leading to a threatening call from the wife. The detectives then propose a reduced sentence if So-young agrees to wear a wire to help capture Sung and Dong. She agrees despite her inner turmoil. Meanwhile, Sung and Dong are at the hotel, joyfully caring for the baby and planning his feeding schedule. Sung finds a new buyer in Seoul, offering triple the market price for the baby. In the morning, the baby's incessant crying due to a fever leads them to rush him to the hospital. The detectives who've been tailing them start to develop concern for the baby. However, the senior detective disapproves of So-young's irresponsibility as a mother. After the medical consultation, So-young expresses gratitude to Sung and Dong for their care of the baby. Meanwhile, the victim's wife hires thugs to buy the baby from Sung and Dong for a large sum. Despite her claim to raise the baby, the thugs are skeptical. One thug, who knows Sung, immediately makes an offer. At night, the detectives confront So-young to delve into her issues. They offer to assist and defend her in court, but she declines and maintains a strong stance. A debate ensues between So-young and the senior detective about the better choice between abortion and abandonment. Trusting them, So-young confesses her crime to Sung and Dong and asks them to leave as the victim's wife is after her. The following morning, Sung secretly meets with the thugs for a transaction, keeping it from Dong. However, Dong, who was in the car, discovers the detective's GPS tracker. Aware of Sung's intentions, Dong insists on not leaving So-young alone, to which Sung agrees. Dong then deals with the tracker. When the thug arrives, Sung, prioritizing the baby's safety over the promised money, changes his mind, which angers the thug. Fortunately, Dong intervenes and incapacitates the thug. They hurry to Seoul to meet another buyer while the detectives follow the misdirected GPS. However, So-young soon reveals their actual destination to the detectives. Upon reaching Seoul, they meet the final potential buyer, a couple who genuinely wish to raise the baby on their own. Having recently lost a baby, they long for a child. The mother even breastfeeds So-young's baby, something So-young herself hasn't done. They ask So-young to sever ties with her baby. After giving So-young some time to consider, they visit an amusement park, taking photos and enjoying rides. Gradually, they begin to feel like a family. On the Ferris wheel, Dong expresses his desire to be the baby's father, bringing a smile to So-young's face as she feels genuinely wanted. So-young realizes it's too late to start anew due to her impending arrest for murder. She confesses that she abandoned her baby to prevent him from being known as a murderer's child. Hearing this, Dong feels some relief, considering his own mother might have had a reason for abandoning him. Later, Sung meets his estranged daughter, who informs him that her mother is remarried and expecting a baby. She politely asks Sung to stay away from her and her mother, leaving Sung alone and grief-stricken despite his imminent financial gain. At the hotel, the boy asks So-young to act as their mother and thanks them for their existence. Touched, So-young reciprocates the statement, thanking the boy, Sung, Dong, and her baby. This emotional moment brings them all to tears. The boy concludes by expressing gratitude for So-young's existence. The senior detective, empathizing with So-young, offers her parole if she turns herself in, allowing her to live with her baby in the future. However, So-young prefers her baby to be adopted by the earlier couple, not wanting him to live her life. Meanwhile, Sung secretly plans to sell the baby to a thug. Dong, who is in love with So-young, plans to sell the baby to the earlier couple to lessen her sentence. His goal is to ensure So-young's early release so she can care for her baby. Sung supports this and tries to dissuade a thug intent on stealing So-young's baby. However, detectives arrive to arrest Dong for human trafficking. Meanwhile, So-young turns herself in, ensuring her early release. Unable to convince the thug, Sung ends up killing him in order to eliminate complications. 3 years later, So-young's baby is being brought up by the senior detective and her spouse. The child occasionally meets the couple who wish to adopt him, but they haven't been able to officially do so.